Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
This is the Nebraska Preps Postgame Show. I'm Damon Benning. This is Jacob Padilla, one of the best in the business. And Week 9, does it seem Week 8, Week 9? What are we calling this?
It's a good question.
The final week of the season, regular season, we can call it that, right?
For Class A, for sure.
Yeah.
It's kind of flown by at times. Other times it's just been kind of a weird year with the teams in and out every week. You never know who's going to be playing. Some teams played a full schedule, some haven't. And that's all part of the process of kind of figuring out how teams are going to be seeded here heading into the Class A playoffs.
Yeah, we'll get to those rankings, maybe kind of how you're looking at it, how I'm looking at it. We'll do A. B appears to be – it's going to be a mess here, right?
It's pretty much what it's been all season long, just everybody being everybody.
Yeah, and we had another one of those tonight as Aurora gets beat tonight.
36-29. Big win.
Yeah, right? 36-29. And don't look, right? But that's 3 losses for Aurora, which for a team that just hammered Hastings a week ago doesn't seem right. But quality loss tonight.
Yeah, Grand Island Northwest, another top 10 team.
Another top 10 team in GI Northwest. And they lost early in the season to Bennington. I mean, those are two. Those, Bennington is 7-1.
Yeah.
And probably ranked number 1 in Class B. I think you have them 1. I probably would put them 1.
I was really impressed with what I saw of them last week against Elkhorn. I think you can't really go wrong picking teams at the top there with Bennington. I mean, Scott has a claim there just with kind of the things that have gone on with them not being at full strength.
Norris
getting
still
on a roll
only
now.
has the 1 loss.
And then Norris has the other one. So I think those are probably the top 3, and any way you want to order them, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, Norris gets the win tonight. They hammer Pius to 10, 38-7. Norris is for real.
Yeah. Got a big one next week.
Yeah.
Going to Waverly. It's another one of those teams that has pulled off a couple big upsets, had a good year themselves.
And I think Waverly got the win tonight. Who was that against York? Did I see that right? Who did Waverly have?
Crete, 35-6. Yep, 35-6 at Crete.
And it was Seward that had York with the 28-3 final. We'll run through those scores early. Bellevue West. We'll start in alphabetical order maybe. Bell East, that one's easy. 24-14 over Papio La Vista. And a little bit of a surprise there.
Yeah, that was a good win for them. I mean, Papillion La Vista, I think, was shorthanded, missing some guys. But for a team like Bellevue East to go in and get that win,
good win,
closing out the regular season, everybody makes the playoffs next year, so you get kind of a little bit of confidence under your belt heading into next week. You never know what's going to happen.
Right. Bellevue West with the good win last night over a very game Columbus bunch, 56-28 final. I think Columbus better than some folks thought. Bellevue West not getting a full game from Kier and Ryan Rogers. Definitely 2 defensive stalwarts. Yeah. That may be a little cause for concern for Bellevue West.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, those are 2 of the biggest playmakers on that defense, and it's a team that you need those guys, especially Rogers up front. You've got, maybe you can help cover up with that back end there with Lillicamp and McDonald and some of those other guys.
Really
back
good
there.
Safety play to help that second level guys.
But man, Rogers off that edge there, big time playmaker for them on defense. So hopefully they're able to use this time off that we assume they're going to get next week and kind of get healthy. That's all we want here, is to see everybody as healthy as possible heading into these playoffs.
Yeah, time off is right. Top 8 seeds will get the bye. Bellevue West will be 1 or 2, I think, in most people's, because we're going to go with a composite, right? Yeah. You have kind of a seedings panel. I believe it'll be some sort of a composite. Like I said, before the end of the night, we'll get to kind of how we've broken this down. A lot of similarities, a few differences. Elkhorn South 28-21 in a fantastic game last night.
Yeah, I watched that one on TV. Wasn't able to make it out there, but first off, props to Kearney.
No question.
And especially quarterback Preston Pearson. Bo Weisler was in that backfield all game long, and he stood in there and made some big throws with heavy pressure in his face to kind of keep that game moving, keep the ball moving for the Bearcats.
Yeah, well coached. The only team to lead versus Bellevue West. Yeah. It was quick. It was fleeting. It was 7-0. But
still happened.
It happened. And Weisler, one of the better kept secrets, I think, across the state. He's a fantastic player. He flies under the radar.
Full disclosure, I'm a little biased there. I coached him in basketball for a couple years during the summer. Great family, player. Great kid. I didn't get to see him play against Millard South because he was out that year. Yeah. So to kind of see them a little bit, and then Mackay Nelson Douglas as well, who also missed that game week 2. To see both those guys out there, they both made a huge difference in that game. They are a completely different team with those guys out there.
Yeah, and that's really the reason, and we'll get to this. I keep teasing it. That's really the reason I put Elkhorn South 3. Yeah. I have them 3 in my rankings. I know Lincoln Southeast will probably be ahead of them in wild card points, but I looked at the common opponents. They played 4. Greater margin of victory for Elkhorn South than Lincoln Southeast, which was kind of the difference for me, and they're healthy now with Weisler and Mackay Nelson Douglas, who they didn't have playing Millard South earlier in the season.
And that'll be really interesting once we see kind of how these teams get seeded 1 through 24 is kind of what did they value the most in terms of overall taking care of business, your record, the strength of the wins, like how the kind of the style points there. It's just tough with such different schedules for all these teams, shortened in some cases for others, and some that Lincoln losing that Lincoln Southeast Gretna game, that was huge. That would have been a huge seeding game. I think that really would have been able to kind of like if Southeast gets that win. I think you're feeling pretty good about them 3-4 there. If Gretna somehow gets the upset there,
they probably stay ahead of Prep,
yeah,
and probably hold on to that 6th seed.
Yeah,
I put Prep in the 6th seed, and I put Gretna in the 7. I don't know if not playing that game helped Gretna, without maybe a potential loss there, but a win certainly would have really would have held firm to that 6th spot.
Yeah, so that, and I was really looking forward to seeing Lincoln Southeast play because I haven't got a chance to do that yet. I was down in Lincoln all day. I was planning to go to that game and then got word, so I ended up coming home and just watching that Kearney Elkhorn South game on TV. But even still, I think can probably figure out that top 8 especially is pretty locked in now, and it's just one or two here and there.
What you do with 6, 7, and probably maybe 3 and 5.
Yeah,
I think Millard South is safe at 4. It will be what do you do with Elkhorn South and Lincoln Southeast,
and that I think. Especially the Millard South versus Elkhorn South there, and
how do you look at that?
How you weigh the head-to-head versus what they look like now.
Yeah, will it be the Kenyon Martin effect?
Yeah.
Where, he gets the injury going into the NCAA tournament. Cincinnati's still looking at a really, really good seed, even though they're vastly different without Kenyon Martin. I think that Elkhorn South team was different without Weisler and Mackay Nelson Douglas.
Although Millard South did go out and hang 64 points on North Star tonight. So they're like, hey, don't forget about us. We're right there too.
Yeah,
so.
and you know exactly what you're getting with them. That's a really good football team, and they're pretty complete. Grand Island, 34-13 over Norfolk. Pretty impressive win here, 40-7. Millard North hammers Fremont. Millard North, I've said this all year, better defensively than their record would indicate as their offense with Quaintance and those guys. They still trying to figure out how are they going to generate enough big plays. Defensively, pretty savvy bunch.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of I think 2 big games in Class A that could really kind of shape the middle of those rankings. And getting a 40-7 win in that game, Fremont having a good season. They're hey, don't forget us in that top 10-12 range. And now Millard North, who obviously got off to a slow start, played a tough schedule early on, have played better lately, and now that's a really impressive last kind of impression that they gave to the committee there with that 40-7
win. They're somewhere in that 11-12
I think
slot. Millard North right there with Kearney. Norris, we mentioned 38-7. Millard South, you referenced, with the 64-0 win over North Star. And Westside. Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive tonight.
Yeah, and Aquinas coming in from Overland Park area out of Kansas, having a pretty good year down there. I think they're in the second highest class down in Kansas there. So, and 49-6, like that, to hang 49 points on them, especially, it kind of shows off Westside's big playability in this game in particular, because Aquinas early on, they were kind of holding them in check. Westside didn't really sustain offense very much, particularly early on. They just burst off a couple of huge plays. I think Peyton had two two huge runs. I think a 59-yarder and a 60-yarder on the quarterback keeper there for touchdowns. And then later in the game, Dominic Rizak busted off a 58-yard run.
Yeah, they actually, which was interesting, right? They get back in the eye, 20 personnel, no tight end, fullback, running back, a little more conventional underneath center, and they get the quick hitter for 60 yards, and it's Katie bar the door.
Yeah, you cannot make a mistake against Westside, and they are going to make you pay if you do, especially with some of those playmakers they got out there. And the interesting thing I thought, like you and I were talking about, and Aquinas was pretty strong up front in the trenches.
I agree. I really liked them on their offensive and defensive lines. That offensive line was a handful.
And they put together some long, extended drives, got into Westside territory, and then Westside defense, props to them with Cade Haberman kind of leading the way there. Some of their linebackers coming down into the box. They're 3-4 times on 3rd or 4th and short. They bowed up and got stops and got the turnover on downs there to get the ball back for the offense.
And Guyette really coming into his own as a linebacker. Hurtado and Haberman really good in the trenches. And then you're backing it up. You saw a tandem, kind of like the Stanger-Urban tandem at Millard South with Cole Payton and Kobe Bretz as your two high safeties. That's a pretty good tandem right there. Watching both those guys patrol the secondary. That's a nice little wrinkle for Westside. Is Cole Payton playing on special teams? He's on the punt team.
Yeah, it's not often you're going to find a quarterback, especially on a Class A team at this level, that plays both ways, especially, and then gets in the mix as often as he does from that safety spot, coming up in the box, making some plays, some tackles.
The same guy we saw rip off the 70-yarder earlier down the sidelines where he turned a foot race into a hand-me-the-stick baton
Then he also,
drill.
I think, had a 37-yard bomb right down the middle of the field to put them in scoring range at a different point, too. So doing it all different kinds of ways.
Yeah, I think I would put them one, right?
I think so.
I've seen both teams quite a bit. I would probably give Westside the slight nod. I'd take Westside 1. Bell West would probably be my 2 seed.
100%. I'm right along with you. And just kind of the way things, we've seen how impressive Westside has been kind of start to finish. Bellevue West, it seems like, again, they've only played, 5 games? Mm-hmm. They're still kind of figuring some things out. You said they had some guys in and out of the lineup. Talent-wise, like, Bellevue West, they could easily be the best team in the state on any given night.
No question.
They could go head-to-head with Westside talent-wise. It's just, at this point, I think Westside is just a little bit more proven just in terms of being able to put together a full season, which isn't Bellevue West's fault, but that's what happened.
For me, I'll go as simple as the quarterback spot.
That's a huge part of it.
I think I know more about Cole Payton than I do Johansson, and that's taking nothing away from Johansson. He's had 5 starts. It's not his. That's just the nature of the beast of kind of how this season went. And talking about Class B, I mean, you've got the scores right there. That is it's going to be tough to sift through.
There weren't a ton of big games in Class B this week in terms of matching up the top teams. We mentioned the ones that did make a difference, but everywhere else, those teams kind of took care of business. So heading into this next week, we've got that Scott versus Elkhorn.
Yeah, that's the big one.
And Norris versus Norris at Waverly. Those are kind of 2 huge games going into the playoffs here to determine seeding and kind of who comes out where.
Could be a really big swing for Elkhorn.
Yeah, and you look at them. We know how talented they are.
Yeah.
But they're a little bit short on some of those quality wins compared to some of those other teams. Like they've lost a couple of those big matchups already. So if they can go out there and get that back against Scott, you put yourselves right back into that mix with anybody else for those top spots.
Yeah, I really think seeding there perhaps more than any other is going to matter. How many good teams can you avoid on your way through the I mean, there's 9 quality teams there.
And that's what we've seen all year long is they've all played each other. It's all these teams are kind of on each other's schedule. So you play each other enough of those good games, it's going to be tough. There is no dominant team. So those are all 50-50 games, and 50-50 games can go either way.
Yeah, you could realistically see Aurora as a 7 or an 8.
Yeah. and
they just beat the number one. They just beat
They
just beat Hastings. So there should be a lot happening. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if we want to touch real quick on a couple of the lower, there's some big games down in C1 and C2.
Two in particular.
We're looking at in Class C when it was St. Paul at Hastings Adams Central. That's 3 versus 5 in the World Herald's rankings. And St. Paul pulls out the 26-20 double overtime win.
Double overtime for 26 points. That was a little bit of a grudger.
Yeah, but shows right there that those are two of the best teams in that class, and that's kind of the matchup you kind of expect out of there. And then in C2, went the other day with the upset.
This is the shocker.
Number 3, Fremont Bergen, 28-24 over number 1, Oakland Craig. Both teams were 7-0 heading into that game, and now you've got Bergen kind of firmly in control, taking that number 1 spot with an 8-0 record.
Yeah, putting it into a 20
game win streak, for
20
Oakland
game
Craig.
Win streak for Oakland Craig. That is, and that's an impressive bunch. It seems like I'm always doing them in the state finals with this last run. Oakland Craig, accustomed to being down in Lincoln in crunch time, but that is an impressive win for a Bergen program that it appears to be back on the rise. A very proud tradition with Fremont Bergen. Home of Zach Wiegert and Larry Martin, a host of not only coaches and talented players that have come out of that program.
Yeah, and Fremont Bergen, Cohen McIntyre is having that kid is a heck of an athlete. Junior, just kind of doing a little bit of everything for them.
Whatever they ask him, jack of all trades.
Yeah.
He's polished. Find a way to get touches. Just find a way to get touches.
Get him the ball, get him near the ball. Just anytime he has a chance to make plays, he's going to deliver for you.
Let's take a look at the back end of those seedings, right? Let's go to A. I think we're in a little bit of agreement here. We're going with Northeast and Lincoln High at that'd be
24 and 23
respectively.
Yep.
I went Norfolk 22.
Yep. And Papio South 21.
And then probably Bell East as your back half.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
See, I think that bottom 4 is pretty clear at this point. And then you've got a mix of, we're looking at Lincoln Southwest, Bellevue East, Papio, Pius X, Grand Island, and North Star. I think all in. That's kind of that mix.
You're right. That's that next tier. So,
and a lot of those, the problem is the teams that we thought were probably the best ones there has some bad losses. Some of those other ones, like I think Papillion La Vista, talent-wise, I thought they'd probably have a little bit better year than they did.
But better than their record.
And then they go out and lose to Bellevue East. So that's kind of like, can you rank Papio ahead of Bellevue East coming off of that?
I think a healthy Papio that's fully
that's
loaded probably, but
do we know what they're going to look like?
Yeah. That's a good point. So the next crop probably starts with either Millard West or Grand Island.
Yeah, I think so. Man. I think that's that part, and then the kind of the 9 through 14 kind of in that mix. That's the other one that's really up in the air, and you're looking at North Platte, and that was a big game today with North Platte pulling off that win against Millard West, and obviously Millard West, the injury issues at the quarterback. They went really young there. It's unfortunate that
you talk about a team you probably don't want to see.
Yeah. Their season hasn't gone quite what they want. It's not necessarily their fault, but that's a good win for North Platte to kind of reaffirm, like, hey, our record is what it is.
They're currently sitting at 5-2.
Yeah, so you could put yourself right in there. That 9-10, kind of in that range is off strength of record. Like, hey, they went out and won these games. And then we talk about Kearney right in there, Millard North right in there after kind of the slow start to get going here.
So let's break down this 8 that we think are going to get the buys, right?
Yep.
At number 8, you have Lincoln East.
Yes.
That's pretty safe.
Yeah.
7, did you go with Prep or Gretna?
So I had Prep at 7 going into this week, just based off kind of the respect to Gretna's record and everything, and then not getting the chance to see that game last night. I think because I kind of laid these out before coming into these week's games, and I wanted to be able to shuffle them around after seeing the results. And not getting to see them play that game, I think I wouldn't have a problem with knocking them down below Prep. Obviously, Prep kind of got off to a slow start, but they're on a roll now. Started out 0-2 and coming back, five in a row now?
5 in a row.
Yeah.
So I went Gretna 7, Prep 6.
Yeah. And I'm fine with that, kind of, like I said. Gretna didn't really get a chance to get that last data point on there in their favor, so they're having a great season, really talented. They obviously earned their bye.
Now they've had their issues off the field that have affected them on, so we'll see what available bodies they have next week, which
they definitely need that week off for sure.
Could be a cause for concern. So the bye will do them. That's a perhaps no team needs the bye as much as maybe Gretna. Like I said, I Prep at 6. Then here we're probably in a little bit of a disagreement. I may be able to talk you into it. I put Southeast at 5. And I know they'll make, and they could be as high as 3.
Yeah,
which I wouldn't have too much of a problem with. I basically, like I said earlier, I looked at the common opponents that both Lincoln Southeast and Elkhorn South have. They have 4 common opponents. Greater margin of victory belongs to Elkhorn South, and now for the last 2 weeks, Elkhorn South has Bo Weisler and Mackay Nelson Douglas. For me, that was the difference.
And I have no problems with that. Like you want to try to find that balance between rewarding the record and Lincoln South. Nobody beat them. Respect to them, 7-0. I would have liked to have that 8th data point there. Because beating Gretna, that would have been a good win in their favor, and maybe that's enough to kind of firmly, hey, we're 8-0. We've beaten everybody. We've got some good wins on this record. Maybe that's enough to kind of entrench them in that spot. Losing out on that game, Elkhorn South got to play. North South got to play this week. So if you want to put those 2 teams ahead, like you said, you kind of look a little bit closer at what they've done. And North South and Elkhorn South, they both only have 1 loss as well. So I think as clearly the 3 teams we're looking at here, it'll be interesting to see kind of the philosophy of this committee and which way they decide to go versus kind of strength of win versus record overall.
Yeah, because you could make the case that Bellevue West has the best win. But they only have
Millard
1.
South.
They beat Millard South, and they beat them relatively soundly.
Yeah.
Right? Now, Elkhorn South may have the best collection of wins, but I'm still not sure on that one either.
Plus, that loss was early, and like we've talked about already, shorthanded. So you can kind of look at them a little bit differently than that point early in the season. They're playing really well right now. So if they unleash or reveal these seedings and Elkhorn South is sitting there at number 3, I'll have no objections whatsoever.
The 3, 4, 5. Now, why it does matter is because if you're the 2, you're going to get 2 of those 3 teams potentially. So that there's some reward to being 1 or 2, right?
Yep. And up and down the lineup, there's some big spots here that are going to really, the seedings are really going to matter, especially once you get into that 2nd, 3rd round of the playoffs.
And then safely, in some order of 2, 1, and 2 is West Side and Bellevue West.
Yep.
How do you kind of parse through the athleticism that you're seeing from those 2 teams now? Because I don't know where we would slot Aquinas. I like their offensive lines and defensive lines. I thought they were very Elkhorn Southish.
Yeah.
As in terms of having 4 or 5 good linemen.
Yeah. Very strong up the middle. Maybe not quite the talent on the edges or at the quarterback from a throwing perspective.
Yeah, who was a backup, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even though he was 6'3", 190, arguably the biggest guy on their offense outside of that massive offensive line that Aquinas brought. But they had lost their quarterback a week ago.
Yeah,
and I don't know what kind of impact it had, but I do know the running back. It's Tank. Now his last name is escaping me. But
Tank Young.
Yeah, getting a lot of national attention. They kept him in check.
Yeah.
They bottled him up pretty good.
Yeah, he had a lot of carries tonight, and there weren't. He had to fight for his yards. He grinded out some tough gains. They got into a rhythm a couple times, put together some long runs. His touchdown that he had tonight, so he had to run through 2-3 tackles.
Yeah, it was an explosive run. And for a 6-7 yard run, he showed some power and a little burst too, because it wasn't the biggest of creases.
Yeah, but for all that volume to only walk out of there with 6 points, I think that's a testament to what the West Side defense was able to do against that running game.
Yeah, very different look for them too, right? It was the Millard North days of old, the single wing. They ran a little flex bone off of that with a lot of veer, counter, dive action.
Yeah, a lot of bodies in there. You're trying to have to sort through traffic. There are a couple times that you saw kind of run into a pile and then suddenly shoot through and pick up some good yardage. It's tough to kind of find where the ball is, and that's kind of much of a scrum.
Yeah, and again, the concerns for Westside in terms of converting third down could have been a product of playing a good team. Not very good tonight in short yardage and on third down in general. Just you talked about the inability to sustain drives, but yet they could offset that with a variety of chunk plays.
Yeah, and that's what they did. What did it for them tonight was those big plays, and obviously we know Bellevue West is very capable of kind of doing the same thing, ripping off those huge gains. So it's nice kind of having that to fall back on where, you may struggle 1-2 plays, but you can get it all back with that third play. One little mistake by the other team, and you're taking advantage of it. And they've got the athletes; they can do it on the ground with the running back, with the quarterback. Can go through the air. They've got those athletes. Avante Dickerson didn't have a big game through the air today. Had a nice kind of fumble recovery and score.
It's back-to-back weeks. He's been around the ball.
Yeah, and he had one nice kick return. He had a really nice defensive play out on the edge where guy tried to hit him with a move and get to the perimeter, and he shut him down. So, again, he's a very good player and showed it again tonight in a few different ways. Yeah,
I thought tonight was the first time in a couple weeks I liked the way that Brett's flashed. We've seen him showcase his talents offensively, right, as a wide receiver. But
another big touchdown tonight. Nice play on the throw from Colby Brown.
Yeah, but he has the ability to take games over defensively. You just don't see that all the time from him, But when he's dialed in and playing downhill, he's a difference maker defensively.
And that's kind of the interesting thing where you have the guys that play both ways versus the guys that kind of split. It's the philosophical difference of always wanting your best players on the field and then also keeping them fresh.
Well, we saw it last night with prep, right? AJ Rollins, I don't know if I saw him take a defensive snap. And you saw what happened with his offensive game.
4 receptions, had a big touchdown there to get him on the board.
It looked like a different player, right? Getting target. That's interesting, right? Because if they've made the commitment for him to just play one way, that's a different player. Because what we've seen with Bellevue West and West Side is the more guys you have that can platoon, typically the better off you're going to be.
But that is kind of the interesting thing of West Side versus Bellevue West. Bellevue West, basically everybody plays one way at this point. They don't do a lot of the playing both ways like they used to back with the guy with Malik Luchwecki and guys like that used to play both ways. Now they're keeping their playmakers on one side of the ball, keeping them fresh, giving them a chance to kind of go out and make the play that way. Whereas West Side, all their skill guys are play both ways. You got Rizak, obviously Dickerson and Bretts, and then even Peyton in the defensive backfield as well. So you've kind of got one team that is trying to keep those guys fresh, and the other like, hey, these are our best players. We know we believe that they can handle the kind of the load here of playing both ways, and we always want those guys on the field.
Yeah, we've seen some really good running backs, right, with L.J. Richardson and Dom Rizak, and there's a host of good running backs in Class A. I was just in my head, though, sizing up these running backs in Class B because you're going to see a lot of ground and pound, and you've got Manessis at Plattsmouth and Sam Scott and Aiden Young and LeClaire at Bennington. I'm starting to look at this collection of running backs. It's an impressive group that we're going to see, in particular, from top to bottom in Class B. Is the return of the running back becoming a thing?
Well, and then you toss in Waverly there. Has got some good backs as well.
Yeah, they have tandem. They have a pair.
So, that's there's a lot of offensive talent there, and that's the kind of interesting thing is the difference in some of these top teams. And you look at Bennington and I think Bennington and Norris are somewhat similar in terms of from the quarterback position. Both Houseman and Bird have shown the ability to be a big-time playmakers, the way they keep plays alive with their feet, the way they're able to kind of sling it around the yard, hit their playmakers, and then take off and run themselves. And that is a huge weapon to have when your quarterback can make any kind of play regardless or in any situation.
Speaking of huge, how would you like to be able to go from a bone to a bird?
That's pretty nice. I'm sure Michael Huffman's kind of familiar with that scenario at WS.
Right, he just shuffles
rotating guys in.
But that is pretty impressive for Bennington to not really skip a beat. You lose a guy like Nick Bonin. Saw him multiple times up close recently in the Shrine Bowl, and he could really spin it, and he changed the way that offense could really move. And in comes a guy like Cale Bird under the tutelage of Zach Bird and Tom, who's kind of the overseer. Yeah. Zach actually the offensive coordinator, but they're keeping it all in that Bird family in terms of offensive prowess.
Yeah, and then that last week, the first time I got a chance to see Bennington, I was aware of Tyler LeClaire. I knew about him. I've known about him for a few years now.
He's a horse.
Big time. That's the first time I've seen Bird play. And I had kind of was looking at the numbers just to see going into these games, some of the top kind of producers in Class B heading into last week. And I was like, oh, these numbers are really interesting. Go out there. And he played even better than kind of the numbers would lead you to believe, I thought. So that could end up being what really kind of pushes Bennington over the top if they get that kind of quarterback play.
Yeah. That's Jacob Padilla. I am Damon Benning. This is Nebraska Preps post game. We're back next Friday, a little smaller slate, but we are going to ramp up for the playoffs. The seedings will be in. They will be revealed tomorrow morning. Should be fantastic stuff. We'll be back next week to get you caught up. Make sure you're with us. Stay tuned.
A Hurrdat Media Production.